Kang Dae-hyun wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the cargo container in front of him. The metal box was huge, almost twice his height, and filled with supplies from 3 different star systems. His job was simple. Scan the container, check the contents, and mark it for delivery. He had done this same task about 40 times today already. The cargo bay of Velthara Station was massive. The ceiling stretched so high above that Dae-hyun could barely see it through the dim lighting. All around him, machines beeped and hummed. Conveyor belts carried boxes in every direction. The air smelled like oil and metal, with a strange sweet scent he could never quite identify. That was the smell of alien technology, he supposed. Dae-hyun had been working on this station for 6 months now. 6 months of scanning boxes, loading ships, and trying not to feel too lonely. He was one of only 3 humans on Velthara Station. The other 2 worked in different sections, and he rarely saw them. Everyone else here was alien. He finished scanning the container and moved to the next one. As he walked, he passed a group of Takresh workers. They looked like giant insects standing on their back legs, with 6 arms that moved independently. Their voices clicked and buzzed in a language Dae-hyun still didn't understand. They didn't look at him as he passed. Most aliens didn't. Humans were new to the galaxy. Earth had only made contact with other species 15 years ago. Most alien races had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. To them, humans were like children who just learned to walk. Interesting, maybe, but not important. Dae-hyun didn't mind being ignored, most of the time. He had always been quiet, even back on Earth. His job was simple and honest. He made enough money to send some home to his mother and his little sister, Ji-won. That was what mattered. He glanced up at the observation deck above the cargo bay. Sometimes people stood there, watching the workers below. Today, he saw a small figure pressed against the glass. He recognized her immediately. It was the Quillen girl who often watched him work. The Quillens were beautiful and strange. They looked almost human in shape, but their skin shimmered with soft colors that changed with their moods. Their eyes were large and luminescent, glowing faintly in the dark. They moved gracefully, as if floating rather than walking. Everyone on the station treated Quillens with great respect. Their empire was old and powerful, their technology far beyond most other species. The girl watching him was young, maybe 12 years old in human terms. Dae-hyun had seen her many times over the past month. She always stood in the same spot on the observation deck, her glowing eyes following him as he worked. He wondered why she found cargo loading so interesting. Today, he did something he had never done before. He looked up at her and waved. The girl's skin flickered with surprised colors, bright yellows and soft pinks. Then she waved back, a small, shy movement of her hand. Dae-hyun smiled and returned to his work. It was a small thing, but it made him feel a little less alone. His shift ended 3 hours later. Dae-hyun cleaned his scanner, logged out of the work terminal, and headed toward the living quarters. The station corridors were crowded with aliens of every type, tall, crystalline Velnorians that sparkled as they moved, small, furry creatures called Fen that traveled in chattering groups, Morvani with their smooth blue skin and third eye in the center of their foreheads. Dae-hyun kept his head down and moved through the crowd. He had learned to make himself small in spaces like this. When you were different from everyone around you, it was better to stay invisible. He stopped at a food vendor in the market district. The Takresh merchant barely acknowledged him as he ordered noodles with vegetable protein. The food was bland but filling. Dae-hyun ate standing up, watching the crowd move past him like a river of strange colors and shapes. As he ate, he saw the Quillen girl again. She walked beside an older Quillen woman, who must have been her guardian or mother. The woman's skin showed deep purple colors, which Dae-hyun had learned meant dignity or importance. The girl's skin was bright with curiosity, shifting between blues and greens as she looked at everything around her. The girl saw him and her colors brightened even more. She tugged on the older woman's sleeve and pointed at Dae-hyun. The woman looked at him with those large, glowing eyes. For a moment, Dae-hyun felt nervous. Quillens rarely spoke to humans, but the woman simply nodded at him. a gesture of acknowledgement, and guided the girl away. The girl looked back over her shoulder at Dae-hyun and waved again. Dae-hyun waved back, surprised and pleased. It was the most interaction he had with anyone in weeks. He finished his meal and walked back to his quarters. His room was small. Just a bed, a desk, and a small bathroom. On his desk was a picture of his family back on Earth, his mother, smiling despite her tired eyes, his sister Ji-won, making a silly face at the camera. He missed them terribly. Dae-hyun sat on his bed and pulled out his data pad. He had a message from Ji-won. She was doing well in school, she said. She had joined a club that studied alien cultures. She asked him 100 questions about the station, about the aliens he saw, about space. He smiled as he read. Ji-won had always been curious about everything. She would love it here, despite how lonely it could be. Dae-hyun spent the next hour writing back to her, describing the Takresh workers and the beautiful Velnorians. He told her about the Quillen girl who watched him work. He made his life on the station sound more exciting than it really was. He wanted Ji-won to keep dreaming about the stars. Before he went to sleep, Dae-hyun looked out his small window. The stars stretched endlessly in every direction, more stars than anyone on Earth had ever imagined. Somewhere out there was his home planet, a tiny blue dot in an ocean of darkness. He was so far from everything he knew. Just one human among thousands of aliens. One small person in a galaxy so big, it made his head hurt to think about it. But tomorrow he would go back to the cargo bay. He would scan containers and move boxes. Maybe the Quillen girl would watch him from the observation deck. Maybe she would wave. It wasn't much of a life, but it was his life. And for now, that was enough. Dae-hyun closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep, not knowing that everything was about to change. Not knowing that in just a few days, he would make a choice that would change not just his life, but the way the entire galaxy saw humanity. Tonight, he was just Kang Dae-hyun, cargo worker. Tomorrow, he would become something more. The alarm started as a soft beep. Then it became a wail that echoed through every corridor of Velthara Station. Dae-hyun looked up from his noodle bowl, confused. He was sitting at his favorite food stall in the commercial district, enjoying his break between shifts. All around him, aliens stopped what they were doing. The Takresh merchants froze with their 6 arms full of goods. The Velnorians' crystalline bodies began to pulse with nervous light. The station's speakers crackled to life. A calm voice spoke in Galactic Common, the language everyone used. Attention. Coolant leak in Section 7 Delta. All personnel evacuate immediately. This is not a drill. The crowd erupted into chaos. Everyone started moving at once, pushing toward the exits. Dae-hyun stood up, letting his bowl fall to the ground. Section 7 Delta was close, just down the main corridor. Then he heard it. A sound that made his blood run cold. Screaming, not the deep roar of a Takresh or the musical cry of a Velnorian. This was high-pitched and terrified. It was a sound he had heard before. The day he first met a Quillen, it was the sound of a Quillen in distress. The crowd was running away from Section 7 Delta. But Dae-hyun found himself moving toward it, pushing against the flow of fleeing aliens. He didn't know why. His brain told him to run to safety like everyone else, but his feet kept moving forward. He reached the entrance to Section 7 Delta and saw the barrier coming down, thick metal doors that would seal the section off completely. Through the closing gap, he saw white mist pouring from broken pipes in the ceiling. The coolant looked harmless, like fog, but Dae-hyun knew better. The station used dozens of different coolants for different systems. Some were toxic, and there, inside the fog, he saw them. The Quillen girl, the one who always watched him work, was trapped behind a fallen metal beam. She was screaming, her small hands pulling uselessly at the beam. Next to her lay the older Quillen woman, the one who must have been her guardian. The woman wasn't moving. "No!" Dae-hyun shouted. He ran toward the closing barrier. A security officer, a tall Morvani with smooth blue skin, grabbed his arm. "Stop, human. That section is contaminated." The coolant is type 7 chemical compound, deadly to Quillins. You cannot help. Dae-hyun tried to pull away. There's a child in there. Rescue teams are coming, the Morvani said firmly. They need 15 minutes to get proper protective gear. You must wait. 15 minutes? Dae-hyun stared at the fog creeping toward the trapped girl. She doesn't have 15 minutes. More aliens had gathered near the barrier now, watching through the narrowing gap. Dae-hyun saw their faces, heard their voices. Someone must help her. A Velnorian said, its crystalline voice tinkling with distress. I would go, but the heat. A Takresh merchant clicked. The coolant leak has raised the temperature to 65 degrees. My body would shut down. I cannot enter, another voice said. My species needs different air pressure. I would suffocate. Excuses. Reasons. Logic. Everyone had a reason why they couldn't help. Dae-hyun looked back at the girl. She was looking at the approaching fog now, her glowing eyes wide with terror. She had stopped screaming. That was somehow worse. She knew she was going to die. Something inside Dae-hyun broke. Or maybe something that had always been there finally woke up. He thought about his sister Ji-won. What if it was her trapped in there? What if she was alone and scared, and no one came to help because it was too dangerous, too difficult, too risky? How long does she have? Dae-hyun asked quietly. The Morvani's third eye blinked. 4, maybe 5 minutes before the fog reaches her. Human, you must understand. I understand, Dae-hyun said. I understand perfectly. He pulled his arm free from the Morvani's grip and ran toward the barrier. It was almost closed now, just a gap 2 feet high. Dae-hyun dropped and rolled under it, feeling the metal scrape across his back. The human is insane, someone shouted behind him. Maybe he was. Dae-hyun stood up and faced the wall of white fog before him. The temperature hit him immediately. It was hot, far hotter than any place he had been before. Sweat broke out all over his body instantly. He tore a piece of cloth from his jacket and ran to a water station on the wall. He soaked the cloth and tied it around his mouth and nose. It wasn't much protection, but it was something. Dae-hyun took a deep breath of clean air and ran into the fog. The world disappeared. He couldn't see more than a few inches in front of his face. The heat was incredible. It felt like being inside an oven. His eyes burned. His lungs screamed for air. But humans could sweat, and sweat helped. He had learned that in school back on Earth. Humans evolved in hot places. They were built to handle heat better than most species. He kept moving forward, using his memory of the room's layout. He had walked through Section 7 Delta before. He knew the merchant stalls were on the left, the central support beam in the middle. His foot hit something. The fallen beam. Dae-hyun dropped to his knees and felt along it. He touched something warm and smooth. A hand. Hana, he gasped. He didn't know the girl's name, but it was the first name that came to his mind. The girl's glowing eyes appeared in the fog. She stared at him in shock. She said something in her language. Words he didn't understand. It's okay, Dae-hyun said, knowing she probably couldn't understand him either. I'm here. I've got you. He examined the beam trapping her and the unconscious woman. It was heavy, a support structure that had broken loose. Too heavy for him to lift alone. But humans were tool users. That was what made them special, his teacher had said. Humans used their brains to solve problems their bodies couldn't. Dae-hyun looked around frantically. There, a broken pipe on the ground. He grabbed it and shoved it under the beam, creating a lever. He found a piece of debris to use as a fulcrum point. Physics. Simple physics. Leverage. His school teacher would be proud. Dae-hyun pushed down on the pipe with all his strength. The beam lifted, just an inch. Then 2 inches. Move, he shouted at the girl, gesturing frantically. She understood. She pulled herself free, then tried to help her guardian. The woman was too heavy. Dae-hyun couldn't hold the beam and pull her at the same time. The girl looked at him with those huge, glowing eyes, tears streaming down her face. Help me, Dae-hyun said. He repositioned himself and lifted the beam higher, his muscles screaming in protest. The girl pulled her guardian free. Dae-hyun let the beam drop. His arms felt like they were on fire. The fog was getting thicker. They were running out of time. He looked at the unconscious woman, then at the girl, then at the barrier far across the room. He couldn't carry them both and make it in time, but he could try. Humans were stubborn. Humans didn't give up. That was what they were good at. Dae-hyun made a decision that would change everything. Dae-hyun grabbed the unconscious Quillen woman under her arms and started dragging her toward the barrier. She was lighter than a human woman would be, but still heavy enough to make his back strain. The girl followed close behind, clutching his jacket. The fog was everywhere now. Dae-hyun's lungs burned. The wet cloth over his mouth helped, but not enough. He needed to breathe, but every breath felt like swallowing fire. 10 steps, 20 steps. He couldn't see where he was going. He just kept moving, trusting his memory, trusting his instincts. Something cracked above his head. Dae-hyun looked up and saw a pipe splitting. More hot coolant about to pour out. He shoved the girl to the side and covered the woman's body with his own. The coolant sprayed across his back. It felt like being stabbed with hot needles. He screamed into his makeshift mask, but the spray stopped. The pipe ran dry. Dae-hyun forced himself back to his feet. His back was bleeding where the hot liquid had burned through his shirt. But he didn't have time to care about pain. Not yet. Keep moving. He gasped to the girl. She nodded, her colors shifting rapidly with fear and something else. Hope. Maybe. Dae-hyun pulled the woman another 20 steps. Then 30. His arms felt like they might fall off. His legs shook with every step. Human endurance was good, but it had limits. He was reaching his. Through the fog, he saw lights. The barrier. They were close. Dae-hyun summoned the last of his strength and pulled harder. Faster. The girl helped, pushing from behind. Together, they dragged the woman through the fog. Alien faces appeared at the barrier. The gap was too small now, only a foot high. They had closed it to keep the fog from spreading. But Dae-hyun could see them through the narrow opening. The Morvani security officer, the Takresh merchants, dozens of others, all watching. "Help!" Dae-hyun shouted. "Someone help me get them through!" Arms reached under the barrier. 4 Takresh workers used their 6 arms each to grab the unconscious woman and pull her to safety. The girl scrambled through next, moving fast despite her fear. Dae-hyun prepared to follow. Then, he heard something that made his heart stop. A rumble. Deep and threatening. "Secondary explosion," someone shouted outside. "The pressure is building. Everyone back." Dae-hyun threw himself toward the barrier, but he was too slow. The explosion came from somewhere behind him. A blast of force that picked him up and threw him forward like a toy. He hit the ground hard, right at the barrier opening. Something hot and sharp tore into his shoulder. Shrapnel from the explosion. More pieces cut into his back, adding to the burns already there. The pain was incredible. Worse than anything he had ever felt. But he was at the barrier. Safety was just inches away. Hands grabbed him. The Morvani security officer, the Takresh merchants, even some Velnorians who should have been too delicate to help. They all grabbed whatever they could and pulled. Dae-hyun felt himself sliding under the barrier. The metal scraped against his wounded back and he screamed again. Then he was through. Out of the fog, out of the heat. Safe. Medical teams rushed forward immediately. Dae-hyun lay on the cold floor, gasping for air. His lungs felt shredded. His back was on fire. His shoulder throbbed where the shrapnel had hit him, but he was alive. A small face appeared above him. The Quillen girl, looking down at him with her huge, glowing eyes. Tears ran down her face. But she was smiling. She reached out with one small hand and touched his burned palm gently. Dae-hyun wanted to say something reassuring. Tell her it would be okay, but darkness was creeping in at the edges of his vision. The pain was fading, which he knew was probably a bad sign. "Is she okay?" he managed to whisper. "The girl. Is she? She is safe, the Morvani officer said. His third eye was fixed on Daehyun with an expression of amazement. Because of you. You saved them both. Good, Daehyun breathed. That's good. The darkness took him then, pulling him down into unconsciousness. But as he fell, he felt the girl's hand, still holding his. Such a small hand. So warm. And alive. Worth it, he thought. It was worth it. When Daehyun woke up, he didn't know where he was at first. The ceiling above him was white and clean, with soft lights that didn't hurt his eyes. Medical equipment beeped quietly nearby. He tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Pain exploded across his back and shoulder. Don't move, a gentle voice said. A medical worker appeared beside his bed. She was a fen, one of the small furry species. Her large eyes looked concerned. You have many injuries. Burns, lacerations, and a piece of metal in your shoulder that we had to remove surgically. You need to rest. Daehyun lay back down. How long was I asleep? 3 days, the fen said. Your body was in shock. We kept you sedated, while the worst of the burns healed. 3 days. Daehyun turned his head and looked around the medical bay. It was full of equipment he didn't recognize. Technology far beyond what Earth had. Through a window, he could see the stars passing by outside. The Quillins, he said suddenly. The woman and the girl. Are they both alive and well? The fen said, her whiskers twitching in a smile. The girl visits every day. She waits outside for you to wake up. Her name is Hana, by the way. The woman is Bora, her guardian. Hana. He had guessed right, somehow. Can I see her? Not yet. You need more rest. But soon. The fen adjusted something on the medical monitor. You are very brave. Human. Very brave. And very foolish. The other doctors say you should have died in there. The heat alone should have killed you. Daehyun closed his eyes. But it didn't. No. The fen said softly. It didn't. Humans are more durable than we thought. Stronger. More stubborn. She paused. The whole station is talking about what you did. They are calling you a hero. Hero. The word felt strange. Daehyun didn't feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had made a simple choice. A child needed help. So he helped. That was all. But as he drifted back to sleep, he heard voices outside his room. Alien voices, speaking in languages he didn't understand. They sounded respectful, almost reverent, and in his dreams, he saw Hana's glowing eyes, looking at him with wonder. Saw her small hand reaching out to touch his burned palm. Saw something in her expression that he had never seen an alien show a human before. Gratitude, trust, and something deeper. Recognition. For the first time, an alien had truly seen a human, not as a curiosity or a newcomer, but as someone who mattered, someone important. Daehyun slept, and healing began. Not just for his body, but for the invisible gap between humans and the rest of the galaxy. When Daehyun finally woke up properly, it was afternoon on the station's artificial clock. Light streamed through his window, and he felt stronger than before. The pain in his back had faded to a dull ache. His shoulder hurt, but it was bearable. The fen medical worker came to check on him. She seemed pleased with his progress. Human healing is remarkable, she said, examining the burns on his back with her scanner. These wounds would take my species weeks to recover from. You are healing in days. We're good at healing, Daehyun said. It was something his mother used to say. Humans were survivors. They bounced back. May I have visitors now? He asked. The fen's whiskers twitched. You have many people who want to see you. But yes, you are well enough. I will send in the first one. Daehyun expected to see Hana. Instead, a tall Quillin woman entered his room. Her skin shimmered with deep purple and gold colors. She wore elegant robes that marked her as someone important. Her eyes glowed with intelligence and something that looked like curiosity. Kang Dae-hyun, she said in perfect galactic common. Her voice was musical, like wind chimes. I am Ambassador Yuna of the Quillen Empire. I have come to thank you. Dae-hyun tried to sit up straighter and winced. The ambassador gestured for him to stay comfortable. You saved my niece, Hana, she continued. And her guardian, Bo-ra. The entire Quillen Empire owes you a debt. I just did what anyone would do. Dae-hyun said. Ambassador Yuna's colors shifted to something thoughtful. No. Kang Dae-hyun. You did what only a human would do. She moved closer to his bed. We Quillens have advanced technology. We have art and philosophy that spans 10,000 years, but we are fragile. Our bodies do not handle stress well. When the crisis happened, our computers calculated the risk of rescue. The numbers said it was impossible. So we waited for professional help. She paused, and her colors became sad. But you did not calculate. You did not wait. You simply acted. This is not something my people understand well. We think before we act. Always. But sometimes, thinking takes too long. Dae-hyun didn't know what to say. He had never spoken to an ambassador before, let alone one from such a powerful empire. The rescue was recorded on security cameras, Ambassador Yuna said. The footage has spread across the galactic networks. Everyone is watching it. Everyone is talking about the human who ran into the fire. They are? Dae-hyun felt embarrassed. He didn't want to be famous. They are. She confirmed. And not just talking. They are studying you. Research teams want to understand human physiology. How you survived temperatures that would kill most species. How you held your breath in toxic air. How you used tools and leverage to solve problems in seconds that our computers needed minutes to calculate. She smiled, a gesture she must have learned from studying humans. You have made my people very interested in humanity, Kang Dae-hyun. We are beginning to think we may have underestimated you. There was a gentle knock on the door. Ambassador Yuna's expression softened. But I talk too much about politics. Someone else wants to see you very badly. Hana peeked around the doorframe. When she saw Dae-hyun was awake, her whole face lit up. Her skin exploded with happy colors, bright yellows and excited pinks. She ran to his bedside, careful not to bump his injuries. Uncle Dae-hyun, she said in accented galactic common. You are awake, Uncle. The word made Dae-hyun's heart warm. Hello, Hana. I'm glad you're safe. Hana nodded eagerly. She pulled out a data pad and showed him a picture she had drawn. It showed a stick figure of a human running into fog, carrying two Quillens. The drawing was crude but sweet. I drew you, she said proudly. Bo-ra is teaching me about heroes. You are a hero, Uncle Dae-hyun. I'm not a hero, Dae-hyun said gently. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away. Ambassador Yuna watched this exchange with interest. Hana has been learning Korean, she said. She wanted to be able to talk to you properly when you woke up. Dae-hyun looked at the small girl in surprise. She had been learning his language? For him? Over the next hour, more visitors came. The Morvani security officer came to apologize for trying to stop him. I thought I was protecting you, he said. But you knew what you were doing better than I did. Who are? The Takresh merchants came with gifts of food and supplies. We are in your debt, human, they clicked. You showed us that courage is not about size or strength. It is about choice. Even the Velnorians came, their crystalline bodies chiming softly. We have lived in fear of our fragility, they said. Watching you reminded us that sometimes fragile things can still be brave. On the third day of visitors, the station commander arrived. Woojin was a large Takresh with dark blue coloring that indicated age and wisdom. He had 8 arms instead of the usual 6, a sign of high status among his people. Kang Dae-hyun, he said formally. The station owes you gratitude. But gratitude is not enough. I am offering you a new position. Emergency Response Coordinator. You will train teams to handle crisis situations. You will teach them your human ways of solving problems. Dae-hyun stared at him. But I'm just a cargo worker. You were a cargo worker, Wu Jin corrected. Now you are the person who did the impossible. We need that kind of thinking on our emergency teams. That evening, alone in his room, Dae-hyun checked his messages. There were hundreds. His mother had sent a tearful video message, proud and terrified at the same time. His sister Ji-won had sent dozens of questions, excited that her brother was famous. There were also messages from other humans on distant stations, from Earth government officials, from news organizations wanting interviews, from scientists wanting to study him. Dae-hyun felt overwhelmed. All he had done was help a child. Why was everyone making such a big deal about it? Hana visited again that night, just before sleep time. She climbed carefully onto the chair beside his bed. Uncle Dae-hyun, she said quietly. Bo-ra told me that my parents died in an accident 2 years ago. No one could save them. The station said it was too dangerous to try. Her colors became sad, deep blues and grays. But you tried to save me, even though it was dangerous. Even though you could have died. Why? Dae-hyun thought about it. Because you needed help, he said simply. And because I have a little sister. If she was scared and alone, I would want someone to help her. Hana nodded slowly. She reached out and took his hand, her small fingers wrapping around his scarred palm. Thank you for not calculating, she whispered. Thank you for just running. And in that moment, Dae-hyun understood what Ambassador Yuna had meant. Sometimes the most important things couldn't be measured or calculated. Sometimes, you just had to act. Even if it seemed impossible. That was being human. 3 months had passed since the rescue. Dae-hyun stood in the new emergency response center, watching his team practice rescue drills. The team was mixed. Different species working together. A Takresh handled the heavy equipment with its 6 arms. A Morvani used its telepathy to coordinate communication. 2 Velnorians operated the scanning systems with their precise crystalline fingers. And leading them all was a human, teaching them that impossible just meant difficult. Remember, Dae-hyun called out to his team, don't just look at the numbers. Think about the problem. What tools do you have? What can you use? How can you adapt? The Takresh worker raised one arm. But, Coordinator Dae-hyun, the computer says this rescue scenario has a 3% success rate. Then we make it 4%, Dae-hyun said. We try. Always try. His team nodded and continued their practice. Dae-hyun felt proud watching them. They were learning. Slowly, they were starting to think like humans, to see problems as challenges rather than impossibilities. The Emergency Response Center was new, built specifically after the incident. The Quillen Empire had funded it. Ambassador Yuna said it was the least they could do. But Dae-hyun knew it was more than that. It was a symbol, a sign that the galaxy was changing how it thought about crisis and courage. After the training session, Dae-hyun returned to his new quarters. They were larger than his old room, with an actual living area and a kitchen. On his desk sat the drawing Hana had made, now framed. Next to it was a holopic of his last video call with his family. His sister Ji-won had news that made him smile every time he thought about it. She had enrolled in the Interstellar Academy on Earth. She wanted to come to the stars too. She said, she wanted to help people like her brother did. You inspired me, she had said in her message. You showed me that humans can make a difference out there. Dae-hyun hoped he had shown her more than that. He hoped he had shown her to be kind, to help others, to run toward the screams instead of away from them. A soft chime indicated someone at his door. Dae-hyun opened it to find Hana standing there with Bo-ra behind her. The older Quillen woman had recovered fully from her injuries. Her colors were healthy and bright. Uncle Dae-hyun, Hana said happily. We brought dinner. It had become a routine. 3 times a week, Hana and Bo-ra came to share a meal with him. They taught him about Quillen culture, and he taught them about Earth. Bo-ra was learning to cook human food, though her attempts were sometimes strange. Tonight she had made something she called Korean pasta, which was definitely not Korean and barely pasta. But Dae-hyun ate it with a smile. As they ate, Bo-Ra spoke carefully in Galactic Common. Ambassador Yuna has returned from Earth, she said. She brings news of the Alliance. Daehyun looked up. Alliance? The Quillen Empire has proposed a formal alliance with Earth, Bo-Ra explained. A partnership. We offer technology and knowledge. Humans offer, well, what you showed us. Courage. Determination. A different way of thinking. Other empires are interested too, Hana added excitedly. The Takresh Collective wants to trade with Earth. The Velnorian clans want to study human medicine and healing. Everyone wants to know more about humans now. It was strange to think that one action, one moment of choice, could have such ripples. Daehyun had just been trying to save a child. He hadn't thought about politics or alliances, or changing the galaxy's opinion of humanity. But that was the point, wasn't it? He hadn't thought. He had just acted. Later that week, there was a ceremony in the station's central plaza. Thousands of beings gathered, representing dozens of species. Daehyun stood on a platform with Ambassador Yuna beside him. He wore a formal uniform that still felt uncomfortable. He much preferred his cargo worker clothes. Ambassador Yuna spoke to the crowd, her voice amplified across the plaza. Today, we honor Kang Daehyun. But we also honor what he represents. 3 months ago, this human taught us a lesson we had forgotten. He showed us that sometimes the newest voice has the wisest words, that sometimes the weakest-looking person has the strongest heart. She turned to face Daehyun. The Quillen Empire has many virtues. We have wisdom and knowledge and art. But we had forgotten the simple virtue of running toward danger to help someone in need. Thank you for reminding us. The crowd erupted in applause. Different species had different ways of showing approval. The Takresh clicked their mandibles. The Velnorians chimed like bells. The Morvani simply bowed their heads with their third eyes glowing. Daehyun saw other humans in the crowd now. More had come to Velthara Station in recent months. They waved at him, their faces proud. One of them, a young woman named Hee-Jin, had even joined his emergency response team. When the ceremony ended, Daehyun walked through the station with Hana holding his hand. She chattered happily about her studies. Ambassador Yuna had officially adopted her, but Hana had asked to stay on Velthara Station. She wanted to be near Uncle Daehyun. They stopped at an observation window that looked out at the stars. A ship was arriving at the station, a transport from Earth. Daehyun could see the blue and green planet displayed on its hull. More humans were coming. More dreamers and workers and people looking for a place among the stars. Do you think they will be brave like you? Hana asked, following his gaze. Daehyun smiled. They'll be themselves. That's all anyone can be. But being human means being brave, Hana insisted. Everyone says so. Being human means trying, Daehyun corrected gently. It means not giving up. It means helping others even when it's hard. But all species can do that, Hana. We just have to choose to. Hana thought about this. Her colors shifted to thoughtful purples. I want to be brave like a human, she said finally. Then just be brave like Hana, Daehyun said. That's enough. As they stood there watching the ship dock, Daehyun thought about how much had changed. He wasn't just a cargo worker anymore. He was a coordinator, a trainer, a symbol of something bigger than himself. It was overwhelming sometimes, but then he felt Hana's small hand in his. And he remembered why it all mattered. He hadn't run into that fog for glory or recognition. He had run because a child needed help. Everything else that came after was just consequences of that one simple choice. Across the galaxy, in 1,000 languages and 1,000,000 conversations, people spoke of the day a human ran toward the screams when everyone else ran away. They spoke of courage and determination and the strange new species that refused to accept that anyone was beyond saving. And on Earth, in a small apartment, a young woman named G1 packed her bags for the academy. She looked at a picture of her brother on her datapad. The brother who had shown her that humans had a place among the stars, not because they were the strongest or the smartest or the most advanced, but because they were willing to try, because they ran toward the screams, because when the moment came, when the choice had to be made, They chose to help. That was enough. That was everything. Dae-hyun looked down at Hana and smiled. The future stretched before them, bright and uncertain and full of possibilities. He didn't know what would come next. More rescues. Probably. More challenges. More moments when he would have to choose between safety and helping others. But he wasn't afraid. He was human. And humans ran toward the screams.